Can I be broke? Candies are family ties.
Welcome to the third episode. Today we are gonna be rigging this. In the last episode we made a couple of materials, right? We made it look good, nice and shiny and nice and rigged. Ridgy? Bumpy. Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, bumpy, and we created this nice soft underglow with the white thing on top of the mushroom cone, basically, which is how I started naming this part. But as you can see, this is not connected to anything, right? And that is not good. So in today's episode, we are going to be rigging everything, or parenting rather, everything together. So we can then grab just this base and move it, and everything moves with it across the floor, basically. And then we're going to be animating it so that, you can just take this and rotate it on the y-axis, right? You can rotate it just like so, and then this and this and this and the button on top of will rotate with it. But this is not the rotation we want, right? We want nice clean rotation in this spot. So to start off, we're gonna turn off the shading viewport because it's not good for our computers, right? And we are gonna start by naming this. Okay, I named this base. This is the main pipe. This is the mushroom. This is the joint. This is the rotation pump pipe, for example, or rod, rather, yeah. Yeah, rod is better. This is the counterweight. And this stuff is button, right? That is used for switching this thing on and off. Now, these things have their origin points. I'm kind of correct. Except the button, which has its origin point right here. But we can make this much better by simply... Wait, I will show you why this is bad, because, everything rotates within the object around the origin point. So if I rotate this, can you see the little speck up there? It rotates around this orange point, which is not good, right? If I was to rotate this, then I would expect it to rotate around maybe this point. Right? That would make sense. How do we fix this? We could, in the edit mode, we could slide this all the way down to the origin point, then go back to object mode, and then slide this up. But no, that's for newbies, okay? I will show you a little trick. If you select everything and you know that everything is symmetrical, then you can just select everything, press Shift S, right? Shift S. This drop-down menu will appear, and you want cursor to selection. And this means that the 3D cursor will appear basically in the middle of every single vertex, okay? If you select just this and this, and you do the same thing, it doesn't change, because these two faces are basically in the middle of everything as well. Does it make sense? I hope so. You can alternatively do it like this as well. Then you go back to object mode, and I have this on my hotkeys, so I don't have to do this, but if you click on object and then set origin to 3D cursor, then this little orange dot will appear there. And then if I click R, it moves like it's supposed to move, right? Alternatively, because this is symmetrical, you can also set origin to geometry, and that will do the same thing. But I don't use it because sometimes the geometry is not exact. Sometimes, I don't know, this face could be like this, and then I want the origin to be here, but I need to set it up, and I want to set it up correct to my standards. Okay, if I leave it like this and I do origin to geometry, then it's going to be, averaged out somewhere between these, and that's not what I want. But this is nice. This is correct. Now this one, Yeah, kind of correct. I don't care, I think, with this, because we're not going to be rotating this like this, because it's gonna be static around this joint, I think. And that's that, I think. So the preparation is done, basically. Now we just need to take the correct parts and parent them to another correct parts. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna parent it to this by selecting this, shift clicking this. This will be orange, this will be more orangey or dark orange. And that means that the pipe or the rod, rotation rod, is active. We press Ctrl P and set parent to object. Okay, and now if I move this, nothing happens other than this dotted line appears. But if I do this, this counterweight moves with the rod. Cool, right? Now, if I select this and I select this as well, and I do the same thing. Now, if I move this, it will move. But if I move only this, you can see the dotted line, but that's it. I do the same thing with this one. Select this, shift select this one, and set parent, boom. And now, this is important because up until now, we could just select all of these 3 things and just parent them to this, but I don't want to. For some reason, I did it this way that I showed you in the video that I was making for the Miscalam, and I did it for a reason, but I cannot remember, but I think it's going to be important later, and maybe I will remember. I don't know, maybe it was because I didn't know what I was doing, but yeah, do it that way. And now if we move this, if we rotate this, right now, that looks good, right? And that looks good because you have this cutoff, nice little thingy, and you have this cutoff. So it actually makes sense that it moves like this. It just clicks into place, right? And it's important to set all of them rotations to 0 because before you parent this, because if this has messed up rotations and then we want the rotations to be around this green axis, which is Y axis, you know, this one. So you press R, Y, and you rotate it like this, but the rotations are not correct, then it's going to be doing some weird stuff when you animate or keyframe these values, basically. So we parent this to this as well. Click shift select this and parent, and then click on this, shift select it and parent. Ctrl P, by the way. And we cannot forget about our little guy, which we will parent to this rod. Okay, boom. And now, as you can see, we have just plane and base. Where is everything else? Well, everything else is right here. You just need to go inside of it, basically, to see that. But it's good that we have it like this because now we can just select the base and we can, you know, slide it across the surface and we don't have to select everything else. And that helps if you have a scene which is full of stuff and you want to, you know, select everything. But now I've selected the plane as well, but I don't want to move the wall or the floor or whatever, right? You just want to move the lamp. So you click on this, boom, boom, and you just slide it across the floor. Perfect. And now if I rotate this, you know, the base, the whole lamp will rotate as well, which is cool. If I rotate this along the y-axis, then everything else rotates as well. And by the way, the part where I told you that this has to be set to 0, right now, even if it was crooked or it wasn't 0, it would be fine because you would just R, Y, and you would just rotate it like this. Then it would be fine. But once you keyframed it, or you keyframed it in, you know, different rotation, then it would be messed up because now if I do R, Y, this doesn't make sense, right? Look at this. R, Y. What is happening? Why is it not rotating on its axis like before? Because it's using the coordinates of the world. So it's rotating around this axis, okay? So looking at the stuff like this, and it's rotating like this around the axis. So now because we have this set to 0, if you press R, Y, Y, now it makes sense, right? By the way, what it does is the first R, Y is around the world axis, and the second one is around the object axis. And we can just do it here as well, you know, in this little menu. So that's that. We have everything rigged. That wasn't so painful, was it? And now we can start animating it. Yeah, I think we have everything set. So on to the first scene. Oh yeah, light, right? Now, since we have this, we have it parented, we have the materials ready, we have everything ready basically. There are two things we can do. We can do it the hard way and the more destructive way, or we can do it the linked way. Okay, the more like difficult way is actually not that difficult if you do everything correctly for the first time or on the first try. Okay, because you're gonna just duplicate scenes as you go, because you want to create the whole animation and it will involve different scenes, different lightings. Okay, so you will have to have the same model but different lights, different, I don't know, objects in the scene or different stuff, right? For example, this is the first scene of my sequence, of my video, which is just plain old, you know, light playing on top of the mushroom thingy. This is the second one, which is another light, again, playing with the mushroom thing. And then this one where it kind of reveals itself, right? These are different light setups with different cameras, different animations, and you don't want to be doing one animation, then rendering it and then, you know, redoing it for another animation. It would be much better to just copy the scene and then reuse some of the stuff so you can get back to it later if something isn't correct or something is misaligned or you don't like the pacing, for example. So what do? We usually use scenes, this thing up here, okay? If you click on this one, you will see the drop down here. If I click on this, you will basically see that I tried recreating my previous mushroom lamp from scratch, but it didn't go as planned. You know, the proportions are a bit different, but who cares? But that's how you use scenes. You can have different stuff in the scene that will not basically influence another scene. Does it make any sense? I hope so. So you can just duplicate this scene, right? You can just full copy, you know, hard push, everything will be duplicated. If I do this, if I show you, okay, this is scene 2, I will name this 2, and this will be our 1. If I leave everything here as is, but in the second scene, I do this, which, for example, I won't, because, I don't know, the model changed, and I go back to scene 1. No change, okay? Which is bad if you want everything procedural and, you know, reactive and linked to everything. So there is the linked way. If you are creating this from the scratch and you go from view layer here in this display mode, which is right here, into Blender file, and you go to objects, you should see just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 things, right? Yeah, 8 objects. One of them is the plane, which we don't want, so we just delete that. And that's that. So we have 7 things, okay? And I'm going to show you how to do the linked thing, okay? You just save the file. Now you're going to go into new file when you save the old file, and you click on file, link, and then you're going to find your stuff, your file, okay? The one that you just saved. You're going to open it, and this little drop down menu will show up. You have all these options. What you want to be linked to this scene. We want objects, and we want to select all of these objects. There's 7 objects in total, and we link them. Now, when you link it, you will see that all of them have blue dots instead of orange dots. That means that we cannot move it. If you press G, nothing will happen, okay? This is just pasted in place. It's just linked and it's going to be wherever the link is. So what you're going to do is go here, hover on top of this, right click with everything selected, right click, library override, and make selected, okay? Which will basically sever the links and you can move it as you please. But if you now go to full copy of the scene and you want to change something by pressing tab, you will see that Blender is unable to execute edit mode because this is still a linked object, okay? You cannot change anything that's happening within the object unless you do it in the original file. So you cannot change anything here other than move it around or parent it or, you know, animate it. You can animate this. For example, if I hover my mouse here, this little arrow or crosshair will appear. And if I click and drag to the top and I change this to timeline, the timeline will appear. If I press N, item, and I'm on frame 1, and I hover on top of this and I press I insert a keyframe here. If I go to frame 50 and I move this and I hover on top of this and I press I again, you can see that there is an animation going, right? Between these two keyframes. And that means that you can keyframe the objects, but you cannot change what's within the objects, okay? Which is good, which is what we want. Because now if you want to do anything with the model, you cannot. And if you do it in the original file, and then you open this file, everything will change, okay? If you want to make this spiky, you will go to the original file, you will make this spiky, then you will open this file, and the spikes will appear here, in this scene, in the next scene, in the next scene, and in the next scene. Everything will be happy. You will be happy, you will save a lot of time. You're welcome. So now we will start by doing stuff that we want and need for the animation. So the first thing we'll be doing is we will put our 3D cursor to world origin. You will add a plane by pressing Shift A, mesh plane, boom. We'll go to tab, edit mode. You will press S to scale this. You will scale this, I don't know, 10 times or something like that. And you will have your ground plane. Now we want to add a camera. Shift A, camera. Where's the camera? It's underneath here, right? Because it is snapped to the 3D cursor. You want to press 0 on the numpad, which will take your viewport and it will shift through everything and it will put it to the camera. You will go to view. If you don't have this menu here, you will just press N, go to view, and here is camera to view. Check this little box. And what this will do is if you move now, when you are in the camera will move with you, okay? I will show you on another 3D viewport. Look how the camera changes if I move this. Ooh. Ooh. Okay. So you make your camera be in roughly this angle. Or is it this angle? Wait, I need to see the first scene. It's this one. And because the basic camera is not wide, but it's not so narrow, I like to change it a little bit. You click on the camera and here you can see this data, this green icon. You click it and it will take you to the camera lens properties basically and everything else. We change this focal length to 120, which will make the camera much more narrower. Okay. If I change this to something like 20, you'll see that the camera has much wider angle, which we don't want because you can see how it looks here. We don't want that. We want 120. Okay. It will focus on the small part of the cylinder, but it will make everything much less perspective. Okay. This is more, how should I put it? orthographic look where everything is perpendicular to each other. And that's what we want for this shot, basically. And I guess something like this is nice. If you want to move, because I don't know, for example, your camera looks like this, okay, while you're moving it, and this is in your way, you can just uncheck this and then shift, middle mouse button, shift this, okay, and then click it again, and then you can just rotate it. You'll have to get a hang of it, but it's kind of intuitive, I think. For your own sake, I hope this is intuitive. If it's not, you can just, you know, I don't know, rotate the camera here, you know, do it in the 3D viewport. If it's messed up, that's probably because we have this transform to 3D cursor and not the median point, which is here. This is the median point, that's the object origin, and 3D cursor is wherever you shift right click, but we don't want to rotate around this. We want to rotate around this, okay? So now if you rotate within this perspective workspace, you can do it whatever way you want. That's what I'm saying. Now I make this camera a little better, a little smaller, sorry, which if I have set this to median point, which is the origin point, it's not going to mess up the camera, right? It's not going to do anything with the camera other than, you know, not being obstructive within our workspace. And I'm going to shift right click here. I'm going to add in an area light. And if I look through my viewport here, I'm just going to click on these. So my composition lines and other stuff will disappear. And on top of that, I will click on this, the camera as well, viewport display, and this passepartout. I'm going to put it not to 0.5, but 1. This will make everything else black, so I'm not distracted by everything else. If you want this to be fully visible, you leave it at 0. If you want it to be like, I don't know, 0.9 or 0.98, so that you are not distracted, but you still can see this, you will leave it like that. But I like to have only what I see in the viewport. Now, if I look through the shading viewport, it looks like this. But this is not what we signed up for, right? We didn't want this. This doesn't look like this. We want this to be black. What does it mean? Is it the light? No, it's the HDRI, which I have. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I did earlier with the timeline, if you remember. I'm actually gonna do it here as well. I'm gonna hover my mouse here until this crosshair appears. I'm gonna click and drag somewhere here so that this appears. I'm gonna click here on the editor type and I'm gonna change it to shader editor. And when I click here on the world, I can see that I have my small Studio 9 selected. And I don't want that. I want to click away from this. But this is my basic setup, okay? I have this file set up like this. So you probably have something like this there, okay? You have this grayish color with strength 1. So you just put it to 0, put this to black, whatever, whichever one you want, you will do. I'm gonna set the denoiser on for this one, and I'm gonna collapse this menu and I'm gonna make this bigger a little bit. Now this looks a lot more like this. Still not correct, okay, but it's looking better. To have it, you know, shining just on the tip, what do we need to do? We need to think about the reflections. How do reflections behave? If the light is shining from here to here, then it's going to bounce like so into this direction. If the light is going here, it's gonna bounce like this to this direction, right? But it's going to be bouncing from here to here, then it's going to be directed this way. And some of those light rays are going to be catched by the camera, right? Which is why it looks like this. But we don't want this. We want it rotated a little bit. We can actually set our rotation to be around 3D cursor. We're gonna actually leave this 3D cursor where it is. And I'm gonna click on R and I'm gonna click on the middle mouse button and drag towards the right. Do you see the dotted line there? If I drag this way, it's gonna rotate around x-axis. If I'm gonna make the dotted line be closer to this blue line, it's gonna rotate around z-axis. If I'm gonna make this dotted line close to the green one, it's gonna rotate around y-axis, okay? So I'm gonna keep it close to the red line, and then I'm gonna leave the middle mouse button, and I'm gonna just, you know, make this so it's reflected just by this side. Now, a couple of things are happening. First thing, I can see the white. I don't want to be seeing the white light, right? So I'm gonna go to the green data tab into settings, and I'm gonna turn off the multiple importance. Now this looks a lot more like this, right? But it's still not that. Okay, so I'm gonna go to numpad 3, which is gonna be viewing my lamp from the side, and I'm gonna slide this somewhere off to the distance like this. Alternatively, I can, you know, play with the spread as well. But I don't think that's how I did that. You can also scale your light. And that's probably what I did for the animation. Yeah, so as you can see, I probably did something like this with the light, right? Where it goes from this point in time across this point and then just disappearing there. And that's how we have to keyframe the light. This one, it was a little bit more difficult, but it's still a bit or on the easy side from the animation standpoint. There will be just 3 keyframes, basically. We just make it move within the workspace and we keyframe the location. Yeah, probably like that. I will start with that. We'll see how it goes from there. So we have the base. This is great because it looks something like this. Right? I mean, this keyframe looks a lot like this one, and that's probably what we are going for. Okay, so it's like 1 second, right? It's more, maybe 40 frames. Here, you can see the timeline. You probably have this gray rectangle. If you hover over this and press N, it will disappear. In the output, you have to check that your frame rate is set to 30 FPS. If it's not, click on this and click on 30 FPS because we are going to be working within the 30 FPS work frame, right? Because that's where most YouTube videos and other videos are, and that's how I like to work, and I like to keyframe stuff because then it's easy to double the speeds and or you know, half the speeds if you want something to be done later in post. No! Cut. Now that we have the rig ready, we can start animating it, and there's 2 things that we can do from this point. We can either eyeball that, which I'm actually gonna do for most part, but I'm also gonna show you one little trick how to do this and be a little bit more precise, okay? If you want to copy this directly, what you want to do is probably have the whole scene visible here, and you want to take a screenshot. When you take the screenshot, you're gonna download it somewhere. Wait, let me just take out the PureRef, input it here. I think that's the whole shot. We're gonna save this, selected images into lamp Miska reference. We're gonna probably put it into the reference and we're gonna call it S1 because it's gonna be our scene 1. Okay, so that's our scene 1. We have the image ready, saved somewhere. What do I want to do with this? I want, oh yes, this is perfect. Yes, I'm gonna keep it like this, whatever. Gonna edit it out later. Now that we have the S1 scene image ready, you are gonna go to your Blender file, right? And as you can see, I started messing with the light, but we don't need it for that now. What we need is we will select the camera. You will go into this data property tab, and here, right here, you see background images. By the way, let me just do this so I can see where you cannot see. Okay, so because I see the whole menu, but you can see my head and sometimes I forget. So right here you see this background images. You check mark this and you click add image. Now this not set, what is it? This whole menu appears, okay? And you will want to open your image, okay? Wherever you saved the image, you're gonna open it. And what that's gonna do is that it's gonna appear, the image is gonna appear behind your plane, okay? That means that if I take the camera and I isolate it with slash, wait, Wait. I don't have my screencast keys on, right? Yeah, okay. Now you can see what I'm doing, okay? With slash on the numpad, you are isolating this, okay? And the same thing here. If you go into the camera view, you will see the image clearly, right? And if you want to do this properly and as close to the actual image or actual animation as possible, the one that you've seen, you'll do this. Now that we are in the camera, we can just start, you know, messing around with it. And at one point, you are gonna find the angle that suits the camera the best, which is probably this one for me right now. As you can see, the angle and the curvature is roughly the same, okay? I'm not gonna match it 100% because then I would have to spend tens of minutes to just, you know, mess around with it. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. Once you have the setup ready like this, you can then start messing with the lights, right? You can then create a light, which is going to be an area light, okay? If you turn on the viewport shading, you will see that this is not exactly the same as we want it, right? And at this point, you will have to mess around with the light a little. You will probably don't want to transform around the pivot point, but around the median point, right? Which is going to be the origin point. And you will probably want to click off in the settings, in the light data properties. You will probably want to click off the multiple importance, so you don't see the light here, right? With, without. We will probably want to scale it on one of the axes. In my case, it's going to be the y-axis, right? If I show you, I'm going to press S and then double Y, and that is going to ensure that I scale this on the local y-axis. And now I will probably switch over to the 3D transform pivot point to 3D cursor, and I'm gonna rotate around x-axis. Something like this, maybe. I will also mess around with the spread, because as we decrease the spread, you can see that the light is not being casted from this portion of the lamp, which is what we want in this case, but also we'll probably rotate the light as well on its x-axis. You know what? I will not mess with the spread, but just with the location and its rotation within the 3D world. And right now I'm struggling a bit to have, you know, large enough light reflection here. So what I'm probably gonna do is that this angle between the camera and the mushroom is probably too shallow. Like this angle from this point to this point. Should I put this? I don't know how to draw in Blender. I don't know how to use that, but basically the angle between the horizontal portion of the mushroom and this angle is just too shallow. We need this to be bigger. So we are gonna go to 3D cursor, transform pivot point, and we are gonna rotate this a little bit. That will mess up our camera position, but we can just adjust it like so. You can see this lightly, you know, the image projection in the background, and that's probably the correct position. Yeah, I like this much better, you know. If I have the light right here, it's not being casted on this side, but we get a large enough reflection here, which is what I like. We're also gonna scale it on x-axis a little. Yeah, something like that. And I like this already. I think this is close enough to this. In this scene, it's probably a little less thick on this part, but I don't care. If you don't like how white it is, or how gray it is, you can just, you know, increase the strength a little. I will probably also rotate this. No. Yes, something like this. Yeah, something like this. Okay. And this is basically my middle point of the scene, okay? This is how I want the middle of the scene to look, which is, I don't know, after 1 second, it disappears. So half a second is this scene, or I mean this point in the scene. And because we know that it's 1 second, or I know it's 1 second, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it is. I'm just gonna go check that we have, yes, here in the output, we have frame rate set to 30 FPS. If you have something else, you probably have something like 29 or I don't know, something else. You can set it to 30 FPS, okay? Do that because it's important. If you don't do that and then you render your images, which is basically just Blender doesn't recognize FPS. It works on just frames, okay? It's the software that we are gonna use afterward that it's important to, okay? So set it to 30 FPS so you don't have any problems, because usually you would not render this. At first you would render this because this is called like pre-animation or pre-production animation or something like that, which is just a grayscale, you know, fast moving animation. But if you want to render that, that's going to take a heck of a lot more time. So what do we do in the industry is at first we just look at the animation itself without any lighting, without any colors, shaders, anything like that. Just look at the animation itself, okay? You use this, but since we are using the light, okay, itself, which is important, and we cannot, or I don't know of a good way to somehow make a pre-production of the light shaders. I like to look at them directly. What I do is basically I render them at low samples, something like, I don't know, 10, okay, and high enough threshold. And then I use denoise, of course. And that's that. We will set our end frame to 30. If you don't have this, you just have to switch to timeline settings, and this little menu will pop up. It will probably pop up with this grayish rectangle here. You just have to hover on top of this and press N. That's basically like the menu, okay? Wherever you are and you click on N, this little menu will pop up. Or alternatively, you can use this arrow everywhere, basically. This left one is, you can use the arrow as well, or you can press T, which is for like a toolbox or toolbar, I think. So now that we have our 30 frames set, okay, we will actually animate the light. We know that the half point between this and this is 15 frames because it's the half of 30 frames. This is 1 second because it's set to 30 frames per second. So you just click on frame 15, okay, frame 15. You can alternatively type it here, and you hover on top of either this or this part of the viewport. You press N, you go to item, you have to click on the light. So the light is selected, and you hover on top of this and you press I. That, what is it? It's keyframed this rotation to this specific frame. And we are going to do the same with the location and probably scale as well. Alternatively, you can just press I and you don't have to hover anywhere else. If I were to have no keyframes here and I just hover here and I press I, it keyframes every single value. Okay. If you want to keyframe just one of these, you just click right and you click on not replace. In this particular case, there was replace, but you press on insert single keyframe. Or you can right click and add it to your quick favorites. And that will mean if you press Q, then your quick favorites menu will pop out, okay? And you can just press on insert single keyframe, but I will remove it because I have my own quick favorite menu. So I it is, okay? That's keyframe 15 or frame 15. We're gonna go to frame 0 or 1 rather. We're gonna turn on the shading. You're gonna press G with the lights selected or light selected. You're gonna press G and then you're gonna press Shift, which is gonna make the light move slower, okay? You're gonna move it slowly in one direction until it fades away completely. You're gonna press I again, and that will basically keyframe the light, okay? Now it looks terrible, okay? But bear with me. If I go to frame 30 and I do the same thing I just did, I'm gonna press I and I'm gonna press play or spacebar, it's gonna look like this. Does it look good? No. Why not? Because it takes nearly 10 frames until anything happens. So it looks kind of like fast at the beginning, right? It's not, you know what? It actually might not be just 1 second animation now that I see that. Let me just check something. It is 30 seconds. Yeah, but I don't have to make this disappear. Yes. Okay. So it is 1 second, okay? It is 30 frames, but the reason why this looks so fast is that the light portion, the actual light, is happening between the frames 21 and 9, basically, or 10, which is 10? Yeah, that's basically 10 frames for the whole animation. And then we get, you know, just little smudges in the rest of it, which is not what we want. But now that we know that the light portion begins at frame 10 and ends at frame 22, basically, or 21, now we can do something like scaling the animation, okay? What do I mean by scaling? It ends with frame 22. So you're gonna go to frame 22, right? You have this frame here. You're gonna hover on top of this and you're gonna press I. That will create a keyframe here. You're gonna go to frame 9 and you're gonna press I again. And now if I go to frame 15, select everything and I scale it, I scale this and I make sure that these two keyframes, which were 22 and 9 or 10, are actually now 1 and 30. Now the animation will not feel as fast. Does it make sense? Now there is something fishy going on here, but don't mind this. We're gonna fix it later. We're gonna start here because we don't want to start with anything. We want to start with just the black screen, right? How do we do this? We know that this rotation is correct. This location is correct. We want it to be like this, right? But something has to happen here and something has to happen here. Here, it's easy. We just press rotate. Wait. We have to go to medium point again, so it rotates on its origin, and we just rotate it on its y-axis. We rotate it away from the mushroom so that we don't see anything, right? And then you press I again when you are on frame 1. What that does is that it replaces the keyframes of the rotation with the rotation we just set in, and that will bring in, you know, this nice smooth beginning of the animation, basically. Now we go to frame 30. We're actually gonna just slide this to frame 30. And something is going on here which we don't want to see. Why? Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so we want to rotate this light the same way we rotated the other one before, away from the mushroom. And we want to do that. Wait, this is a problem I haven't experienced yet, and I don't know why it's happening. But how do we do this? We can do it the proper way, or we can do it the hotfix way. I'm gonna show you the hotfix way, okay? We're gonna go to Graph Editor. Okay, you're gonna click on this Graph Editor, and you're gonna normalize everything. Now this is a mess, right? You're gonna click on N, so we don't have this little ugly sidebar here. You're gonna enlarge this so we can see this better. And what can we do here? We're gonna explode this so we can see every single keyframe here, or set every single value that's keyframed. We have the scale, we have the rotation, and we have the location. I think that we can hide everything but the Z location, and we can actually play with this, and that might solve our problem. It actually did. We can probably scale this a little bit more. And I think that's good enough. Should be, right? Yeah, I think this works. You just have to play with these a little bit. I can tell you how this happened, okay? Because when I was at frame 30, I had my light, you know, too high for how it was positioned. So it casted the reflection there, which is unwanted. So I just played with the keyframes themselves and you know, I just looked at how it looks in the animation, and I think this is pretty good. I'm pretty satisfied with this. Now you might be alarmed that, oh, this keyframe is at, you know, keyframe minus 38 or something like that. Don't worry, nobody cares, okay? Unless you are merging the animations, or you want the animations to be like continuous from one another, okay? If you had, I don't know, a different camera angle on the same thing, then you would probably have to be worried about the, you know, keyframes not being properly aligned. But because we are going to be cutting into a different scene, basically, this is a different light, a different camera, a different reflection, okay? It just is the same like flow, kinda. It's gonna be a whole different scene, so we don't have to worry about that, okay? Sometimes the hotfix way is the right way, but of course, if you or the client wants some minor adjustments later, then it's gonna be a little bit of a pain, but we can handle that later. So that's that, okay? That's scene 1. How do we preview it if it's actually correct? Because sometimes the scene is heavy. If I play this, you can see here that I have 30 FPS, which is fine for me, okay? But sometimes this number is closer to, I don't know, 15 or 12, for example. How do we check for the correct speed, correct movement, correct everything? What I like to do is that I like to render the scene. Now, as I said before, set the max samples to some low number with the denoise on. I preview that's the first or the last frame. I preview the frame that I want to preview, which is frame 17 in this case. And this looks fine, okay? This looks just fine. I know this is choppy, and it's choppy because I've rendered just 5 samples. But that's okay for us, okay? This is just work in progress. So you don't have to worry about that. What you have to worry about is compositing though. Because I have my files set up this way. Don't mind this, okay? You will not have anything here in your file. We'll probably have this, okay? Just black or grayish screen, something like this. Yeah, something like this you will have there. And you will have this unchecked. But because I you know, set up my files this way, I already have my denoiser and mixers and glares and lens correction in place. But don't worry, I'm going to be turning this off for now, and we're going to render this. We're going to go to output. You're going to set it to JPEG, and you're going to select a folder where you want this rendered. In my case, it's going to be animations, lamp, Miska, R&D, preview, and it's going to be vid, scene 1. Yes. If you wonder why there is already scene 1 and scene 2, that's because I already rendered it. I already shot the video, but I had to redo it because my mic wasn't on. So I'm just for half an hour. Okay, so this S1, boom, it's just a test. And we render this by pressing Ctrl and F12. You can see how choppy am I. That's because of the rendering. By the way, for those of you who noticed this and are wondering, what is this? It is a band-aid. Why do I have a band-aid? Is it because I want to be a cool Naruto character? No. It's because I have a scratch here on my nose, here. And it's really visible because when I find a scratch on my face, I have to scratch it into oblivion, taking half my face with it. And I don't want to do that. Now, our scene is rendered. So we're gonna go to DaVinci. DaVinci Resolve. And we are gonna bring in our rendered scene and we're gonna see how it looks. It looks spectacular. That is exactly what I wanted. You can render this without the denoise, okay? If you are like that, I don't judge you. That's up to you, okay? This looks fine to me as the first scene. I like this. But now we can do a second scene. How do we do that? Like I told you, the scene setup, right? You're gonna duplicate that. What's it gonna do? If I press full copy, it's gonna copy everything, okay? But I still cannot edit this, which is great because I can only move it. And whatever we do here doesn't happen here. Perfection, right? Perfection. So we're gonna call this scene 2. I'm gonna call this one scene 1, just to have everything organized, neat and easy. And we're gonna switch this. Actually, we're gonna take every single keyframe, and we're gonna delete this because we are not gonna need it. Okay, we're also, if you want, gonna repeat the sequence of going to the video, taking a screenshot, putting it into the camera as a background image, aligning into view, and then, you know, animating the camera and the light. Actually, just the light, because in those cases, the camera doesn't move. Or does it? Oh yeah, the camera moves here. Can you see? Can you spot this? Yes, it moves just a little bit. It rotates around the lamp. So what do we do here? I just eyeball it. Just eyeball this. Something like, actually, I think 80 will be just enough. Will this be enough? Probably not. Something like this, okay. You know what? I think that this will be set to 90. Yeah, I think so. I think the way I did the second scene is that I have my camera parallel to the X and Y coordinate, basically. That means that the rotation of the X for the camera is 90 and it stays that way. But we want to be able to see something like this, right? Which is down. So how do we do that? How do we actually see down if we are going to look in front of us? That doesn't make any sense, right? Let me show you how I do that. Sometimes it looks unnatural. Sometimes it looks interesting. I encourage you to use this wherever you can and wherever you have parallel lines that you don't want to be skewed, you know, because of the perspective. It doesn't look as nice, in my opinion, to have parallel lines, like, for example, walls, especially when you are shooting architecture or something that's within like architectural space. You don't want the walls to be this way because you're looking up or down. Wait, is it the other way? If you're looking down, yeah, it's like this, and if you're looking up, it's like this. I don't like that, okay? What I do is I set the rotation of the camera to 90 and I use shift, okay? This one. If you shift the camera on x-axis, it's gonna shift, look at this. It's gonna shift on the x-axis. It's gonna look left to right, okay? Without distorting your horizontal lines. We're gonna set it to 0. But if you use the y-axis, boom. Now this should be, yes, now it is. This is parallel to our sides, okay? So it looks like it's all just parallel to each other, okay? It looks nice. I don't know how to put it. It just looks geometrically correct. Not correct, nice, just nice. It looks nice. Now, I told you that the camera moves a little, and we're gonna move the camera, don't worry. How are we gonna do it? We're gonna press numpad 7 while we hover here. It's gonna give us the top view. We're gonna select this. We're gonna press Shift S, cursor to selection, which is gonna place the 3D cursor here, and we're gonna put in a sphere, for example. We're gonna scale it a little bit, and we're gonna select the camera and then the empty. We're gonna press Ctrl P, setting apparent. You want the empty to be in the middle of the mushroom and the camera to be just slid to something like that. So now that if we rotate this, you can see the slight rotation, okay? but this angle doesn't move, basically. It moves a little, but not so much. And that's what we like. So this way, okay? Empty in the center of this rod, camera parented to it, and just slid a little bit to the side. So you can rotate this, and these two will just rotate over each other. That's what we like. Now, if we go to the shading panel and we put the light here, we rotate it some way, somehow. Wait, why is it lit? Oh, I know. Because that's because we have the light here. Yes. Now this might be a problem because we want to change the material which is linked. A problem, right? Well, not exactly. We can just create an override by clicking on this. No, sorry. We can just create an override by clicking, right-clicking on this mushroom, library override, make selected and content. That way, we have overridden the materials and we can make this local by clicking on this chain link. That will open up the emission. And if we go to shading, shader editor, object, and we put this to 0, then we have nothing, right? We don't have the emissive material, which is great because we don't want that. But here in scene 1, it still is emissive because this one isn't overridden. Now, as you can see, this portion of the floor is lit, right? Because of the light, it's hitting our mushroom and the white portion of the mushroom is just bouncing the light back down. How do we get rid of this? We have a couple of options. We can just, you know, turn off the visibility of the object, of the floor, but we don't want to do that. That's way too much work. We can probably make the shading, we can just light link this to the light so nothing else gets, you know, the reflections. But that's too much work. What can we do here? We can just press X on the floor. Boom. Problem solved. Sometimes the easiest ways are the correct ways. 180. Do I need to make this stronger? Do I need to make this bigger, for example? Yes, it seems like making it bigger helps. You know what I will do? I will do the same thing I did before. I'm gonna find the middle point, which is probably this. Yes. I'm gonna keyframe everything. Okay. I'm gonna go to frame 1. I'm gonna keyframe all these values. I'm gonna go to frame 30. Again. And then I'm gonna see how much. Ah, yes. This looks fine, I guess. I think that looks kind of cool, actually. I think that I used fade away here. We don't need to fade out. At least not so much. Nice. Yes, I like that. Just play with the values, okay? You set the one that's in the middle to what you want it to be. And then you play with this value and you play with this value. Like, is this fast enough? Or do I want to already be starting on frame 5, for example? If you want to be starting on frame 5, there's nothing easier than just sliding this to 5 frames, you know, 5 frames to the left. And then you're going to be starting at the frame that you want this to start. I actually might do this. No, I don't like that. I like this. Even though it doesn't look like the initial animation, it looks a little bit like it. I think I like this better. And the same thing as before, you know, you're gonna go to output, you're gonna go and you're gonna create a new scene folder. You're gonna name it S2 and you're gonna render by pressing Ctrl F12. Our sequence is done. Okay, we're gonna do the same thing we did before. Go to DaVinci, go to scene 2, and we're gonna go and see what this thing looks like. That looks fine to me. It doesn't, because you have like what, 8 frames that there is just nothing, right? Can you see this? This is fine. It starts fine. It starts already with something. It could actually be starting with nothing, but it's fine for now. But this is problematic. Okay, we have 22 frames of something and then 8 frames of nothing, and then something happens. Okay, so we are gonna go back to scene 1, to the light, and we are gonna slide this 8 frames that way. It actually doesn't help. Why? Okay. Okay, I like this. This is all right. This. And we can render this again. But before I do that, I'm gonna do that actually, but you will not see it. I'm actually gonna do that. S1/02, and I'm gonna render this again. Okay, so now it's done. Go to DaVinci 02. Okay, that is more like it, you know, because here we still have the light shining. Okay, and by clicking on this and pressing D, I'm disabling this, so I see this, just the one under it. And the easing here is much more plausible, you know. I like this more. It just goes into each other. I like that much more. And with this, I'm gonna end this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe, press that notification bell, and I will see you next time.